I'm having a tough time trying to figure out how to start this show. That's the only thing.
Hello, and welcome back to the DCL podcast.
Yeah.
I am really snarky this week.
Well, hello, and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast. I'm your host, Steve Creasy, and joining me today from PackYourPixieDust.com is the co-host of the show, Christy. How are you doing today, Christy?
Hi, I'm well. Cold, but well. How are you?
Cold, yeah. Well, it is December. I think the big guy's going to be flying through the sky here soon for those who celebrate Christmas. And so, do you guys have some snow back there in Detroit yet?
We have had snow. I think it was like maybe the snowiest November, but so far, no snow right now, which makes me happy.
Okay, and today we are going to talk all about the kind of Broadway caliber shows on Disney Cruise Line, and I thought like the perfect person to bring back for this, and we didn't want to go someplace warm, we wanted to stay someplace cold just to keep the theme going, is Brett from Wisconsin. How you doing today, Brett?
Great, glad to be talking about the productions on DCL.
Yeah, and how are things up there in Wisconsin? You guys got some snow up there as well yet?
Yeah, we have a dusting of snow, but yeah, we actually got snow 2 months ago in October, so I feel like we're totally over snow by this point.
There was too much snow already. It's too cold. It's not even winter yet.
Absolutely insane.
Let's turn our focus then down to DCL, where they're pretty much all the cruises are done out of New York, so everything's down south now, heading into the warmer weather out of Florida and Galveston, Texas. And we are going to be talking about all the different Broadway caliber shows that Disney Cruise Line puts on board their ships today. We're going to touch on just the ones in the Walt Disney Theater. There are 2 different theaters on each one of the ships. The Walt Disney Theater is the main one up in the front, and that's where all these shows are held. And I'm totally drawing a blank as to the movie theater. Do you guys remember why am I drawing a blank on this?
Buena Vista.
The Buena Vista Theater. Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank God for Brett. I hope I don't lose my job to him.
Well, just to start off, Brett, why don't you give everybody kind of your background on some of the different cruises you've been on and the ships you've been on and the shows you've been able to see. You don't have to go through all the specific shows, but just kind of your background.
Sure. So I've been on 7 Disney Cruise Line sailings over the past 7 years. So I've been on the Magic, Wonder, and Fantasy. So the Dream is still uncharted territory for me. And I've seen all the shows on those 3 ships, except for Twice Charmed. And I've seen some shows that are now retired, like Villains Tonight and Toy Story the Musical. So I wish those 2 were still part of the mix, but nonetheless, I really always enjoy the different performances on board, so that's why I'm glad to be on.
I've not been on the Dream either, and so we're going to rely on Christy to cover all the aspects of the Dream today.
All of it, huh?
All of it. And I guess just one other thing before we kind of jump into like the meat of the show itself. Brett, have you had a chance to go to Broadway, and have you seen some shows actually in Broadway, or do you take in the theater where you live in Wisconsin?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen several Disney Broadway productions over the years. Back in '99, I saw Beauty and the Beast, so don't have a clear memory of that, but nonetheless, I love the film. And then I also saw Mary Poppins back when it was on Broadway about a decade ago. And then 6 years ago, I saw Newsies. So I've seen several of them, and then I've seen Lion King on tour.
And how about you, Christy? Have you been able to either go to Broadway or see some of the shows as they travel through?
Yeah, so never Broadway, but we have theater in Detroit that I've seen The Lion King and then other Broadway shows, but not necessarily Disney.
I'm going to be completely honest, and that's why I really wanted to bring you on today, Brett, is I am not the best with theater. I really enjoy theater. My wife and I had a chance to go see Frozen on Broadway, which was kind of neat, and I saw Aladdin on Broadway, and then we've seen The Lion King as it traveled through as well. So I wonder if that's a show is that a show you think they would ever put on Cruise Line there, Brett, The Lion King, with all the kind of puppets and whatnot that goes into that show?
I'm surprised they don't, actually.
Yeah, it kind of doesn't make sense, because Lion King's also one of those shows that they've had at some of the international theme parks as well, in terms of like their versions of like Downtown Disney. I think like on Shanghai, they have a Lion King production, and others as well. So yeah, it makes no sense why it's not on DCL.
Well, we're going to kind of speculate that at the end, maybe some of the different shows we'd like to see. But let's just talk about the kind of the basics of the shows.
Disney has a production in their main theater every night. Sometimes it's a new release movie, and sometimes it's a variety show, and sometimes it's like a magician and people like that. And then several nights of a week-long cruise at least, there will be these Disney put-on productions, which is what we're mostly talking about today.
When you first get on board on day one, you get the day one navigator, which I think is kind of cool. It kind of outlines the entire cruise so that you can plan ahead as far as what you may or may want to do, the shows that you want to see. So it'll kind of give you a heads up what night the variety show is going to be. Like on Tuesday, it's going to be The Magician. On Wednesday, it may be Tangled, depending upon if you're on the Magic or not. So you can kind of plan ahead that way. So that's kind of the best way to start your cruise is once you get on board, take a look at that navigator. And before you even get on there, Brett, have you gone... And I'm going to give a plug to Scott Sanders, the Disney Cruise Line blog. It's just a great place to go and look at the navigators ahead of time. It doesn't mean that the shows and the events will always happen in the same way, but you can kind of get a gist of it. Do you ever go ahead of time to look and see those navigators to kind of plan when you're going to do things on your cruises?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good reference, especially to compare similar types of sailings, and certainly recognizing that things sometimes change over time, but there's a certain level of consistency in terms of the main Disney productions. And also to see, too, that Disney's now experimenting with having like matinee showings at times of some of their more popular shows.
So, Christy, why don't you talk about how the shows run every night or the timing of it?
So there is a chance there'll be a matinee, and that'll be in your navigator. But most of the time, they're early dinner seating. So if you have the early seating at like 5:45 or 6 o'clock, whatever it is, you will go to the late show, which typically starts at 8:30. But look at the navigator, because depending on the length of the show, or because like Frozen runs long, and so they give it more time. If you have late seating, then you will go to your show before dinner. And I believe that show typically starts at 5:45. But again, look at the navigator. And they will do that for each of the shows all week long. Now, occasionally there is a chance where they will rerun a show. So sometimes Beauty and the Beast on the Dream is run 2 times over their cruise. And when that happens, they run that show just one time that night. And it'll be at a time where both of the seatings could go to it.
Now, all these seatings are open seating. So there's no need, like on some of the other cruise lines. I know like on Norwegian that I've been on, some of the bigger shows, you need to get tickets ahead of time. But with all the Disney shows, it's open seating, so it's kind of first come, first serve to get there as far as getting your space. And there is also seating for ADA, so disability patrons too. There's plenty of seating for them as well for you to get in. The shows are free, although, as you say, Christy, what does that mean?
No additional charge.
No additional charge.
Included.
Yeah. They are covered in the cost of your cruise line expense. So there you go. One thing that I wanted to throw out there, like you said, Christy, is you can watch it on TV. And you've done that, I guess.
I have. So, my kid goes to bed early, and we travel way too much to have it be so exciting every time we go on a trip. He doesn't get to stay up past his bedtime. So my husband and I watch a lot of the shows on the TV in our room.
I believe they show them live. I'm not sure if they show them both times. Do you know, Brett, by any chance, have you ever watched them on TV?
I actually haven't.
Okay. I think they're pre-recorded because we rewatch. I could be wrong about that, but we rewatched one of the shows one time, and they were not the same people that we had watched earlier that week or whatever.
Okay, well that makes sense. So they may not be actually recording the show that's happening while you're on the ship, but you'll be able to watch it in your stateroom as it's going on. And I know that they run it throughout the cruise. So you don't necessarily have to watch it at that time point during a sea day. You could watch it in the morning, perhaps, when you get up after breakfast or something like that. Well, let's talk about the theaters themselves. Now, all of these shows are set in the Walt Disney Theater. And I kind of wonder, Brett, I wanted to kind of get your perspective as your thoughts on the different theaters on board the ships.
Yeah, well, I think everybody knows that the Walt Disney Theater is the main place to be. And it just has this very opulent, regal feel to it. So it feels like you're going to a real Broadway show in New York. What's nice about the theater too is that over time they've really enhanced it so that many of the shows have really cool lighting effects and sound effects too, to make it feel like an immersive experience, not that you're just looking at the performers on stage, but there's different sights and sounds throughout the whole venue. And on the Dream and Fantasy ships, it actually spans 2 levels, so you can get seats from even higher vantage points.
So have you sat up in the second level there, Brett, on Fantasy?
I have. I'm not sure if I have for the musical productions, but I have for some of the other variety acts and shows on board.
That's usually where we sit when we go. I don't know why that is, but that just tends to be where we are.
I think they're kind of amazing theaters. They're very, very intimate theaters, and like you said, Brett, very opulent as well. And I was actually surprised when I went to Broadway, when we went and saw Frozen, how small the theaters actually are on Broadway. And I mean no disrespect in that. I for some reason, I just thought they were going to be like these just gigantic open theaters, and a lot of them are pretty small, so that you really get a good close-up view of the productions as they're being staged in front of you. Well, before you get into the theater itself, they also sell refreshments. Do you guys ever partake into any of that type of stuff at all, by any chance?
We are fans of popcorn. So we do, just on our last cruise was the first time, although I've ever purchased it, because I'm also, man, I will go spend tons of money on vacation, but I hate paying for extras on those cruises. So then I try to avoid like the soda and the snacks that are sold or available for purchase right outside the theater is just that, available for purchase. So I'm like, there is stuff included in this cruise in other locations. So I'm really bad about stuff like that. Like I'll bring my own water in, or, you know, you can get your drink from the pool deck and then not have to pay for it right there.
I'm totally in the same boat, no pun intended. Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like it's a complete waste of money to pay extra for some of those items that you could often get elsewhere around the ship. So, and I see people all the time, like they're bringing pizza in, or different like stacks of cookies. Like, I'm not sure if I'd go quite that far, but I definitely respect it.
I've kind of tried to wrap my head around why they charge for popcorn, other than the fact that maybe by doing that, you know, not everybody gets popcorn, so it's not like a total mess for them to clean up afterwards. I don't know.
I mean, cruise lines are going to make money where they can, and they can make money there.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
A little concierge note: if you're in concierge, you can get bags of popcorn from concierge.
Okay, well, let's kind of turn to the shows themselves. One other thing that Disney does, which I think is kind of cool, we talked about it on one of your, I believe when you did your transatlantic cruise, Brett, was a lot of times now, especially on the longer cruises, and it seems like maybe the specialty cruises, they have, and I was trying to find the name for it, they have a special name for it, it's called like the Broadway Series of Stars, I think, on board the ships, where they will bring sometimes 1, maybe 2 stars that have appeared on Broadway that you will be able to see in the shows as well. And you alluded that you went and saw Mary Poppins, Brett, and we were able to see Elizabeth DeRosa. I'm not sure if you saw her on Broadway when she was playing Mary Poppins, but she was on board our ship, the Magic, this summer.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, she played Mother Gothel in the Tangled musical on board, and what was kind of cool about that is not only do they perform, but they will also, you know, throughout the cruise, they'll give kind of informal talks. They'll talk about their careers and experiences, and it kind of gave us, you know, the opportunity to learn a little bit themselves, but also ask them questions. And I think you had the opportunity to do that as well in your transatlantic cruise, right, Brett?
Yeah. For our voyage, we had Kevin Massey, who played Tarzan, as well as Carol Lindsay, who played one of the main characters, Catherine, in Newsies. So, and they're a real life married couple too. So that added an interesting spin to the dynamic.
We had Paige O'Hara on our Panama Canal cruise, but she did not perform in any of the shows, at least as far as I know. She only did these like sessions where she talked about herself. There was different, you can ask questions and you can get stuff signed, and because she does artwork, so she sold that. So that was super fun.
And why don't you talk a little, if you remember, Brett, about your cruise on the transatlantic, some of the things that you got to do with Carol and I'm totally drawing a blank on his name.
Yeah, Karen and Kevin. They kind of I think the typical set for the Set Sail series, where there's generally one performance. So in their case, they kind of performed a rendition of a variety of different Disney songs that were framed within the context of their life and career and actual love story. So it was a unique spin. And actually, in retrospect, I realized they offered a similar type of performance at Epcot during one of those festivals, I think like Festival of the Arts. So Disney's kind of doing this parallel thing now with some of the Broadway performers at Epcot, those individuals also being part of the Set Sail series. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, Karen, Kevin, they also had a Q&A session and an autograph session. So it was really nice to be able to see them in different contexts. And I chat with them at a few different points and saw them around the ship. So very accessible. And I think it's really nice that they have this bonus on some of the more unique sailings or the European sailings, for instance.
When we went to Norway, we had Hector, the magician, on board. I don't know if you guys have seen Hector by any chance. But
I haven't, but I remember how much you loved Hector.
Yeah, he was. No, he's pretty amazing. We've seen him 3 times now, but it was kind of cool. He came and did his performance, and I think that usually a lot of times the stars will leave, or the performers will leave if they're just doing 1 or 2 nights. They'll fly in and they'll get on the ship, and then they'll leave when they get into the next port. But he stayed on the entire time, and it was actually pretty fun. He brought his family, and we were in the hot tub one night, and he and his family were there. We actually got a chance to talk to him, so it's kind of cool to be able to, as you said, Brett, kind of be able to meet some of these different stars in kind of more casual, areas where you can actually kind of learn a little bit about what their life is like.
Yeah, no, just seeing it's funny to see these notable personalities just hanging out in just the common spaces. I remember I saw one of the comedians who was doing yoga out on the walking deck, and just random situations with these folks. But it makes it feel like you're part of a common community, even though they're actually some of the primary entertainers on board. So
you talked about them being just, like a part of your cruise. I asked once about I think I asked the concierge host on my Panama Canal cruise, in fact, where do these stars stay? And if there is a guest cabin available, they will stay in the guest cabin. So if they didn't sell every single cabin, or if there's a cabin available, they'll put them in there. Otherwise, they do stay in the crew quarters. I thought that was a fun little tidbit. One other piece of housekeeping before we talk about the shows: don't arrive at the last minute if you really want a great seat, or you want to sit your family of 8 together. So you should still arrive early. And there are poles. There are different seats throughout that have poles, I guess, holding the ship up. But so they can't be moved, and you have to just take that into account when you arrive, that there might be an obstruction to viewing the stage. So arrive early so you can pick your seat. They say no saving of seats, but obviously if you're a family of 4 and there's 2 of you there and 2 of you into the bathroom, no one's going to say anything about that. You are going to have a little bit harder of a time saving a seat for 20 people.
Well, let's turn to the actual shows themselves. We'll kind of do a little overview of the big shows, and we'll talk about them just ship by ship. But as far as each ship has one main Broadway caliber type show on board, and the Magic gets Tangled, on the Wonder it's Frozen, on the Dream right now it's Beauty and the Beast, and on the Fantasy it's Aladdin. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on this, Brett. There's a lot of controversy. People think about it either way. It depends upon what your perspective is on the arts. But Disney claims, or kind of their mantra is that they are Broadway caliber shows. And I was kind of wanted to see what your thoughts were as far as what your thoughts were on the level of production that they put on board the ships. Yeah,
well, I haven't seen Aladdin or Frozen on Broadway, so I can't make direct comparisons there, but I have seen both of those productions out at Disney California Adventure. Frozen now occupies the Hyperion Theater where Aladdin used to be, and I would say the versions at DCA I feel are perhaps a little bit closer to the quality, because I think the space affords it, in terms of just the fact that that's the only show that ever plays there, so you have some really unique features in that type of venue. But as far as with DCL, I would say they're close to Broadway caliber. I think that the biggest gap is that you don't have a live orchestra, and I would say that makes all the difference, in terms of feeling a sense of richness and immersion and class. Because when you have scores in the background that are just pre-recorded, it doesn't have that same level of authenticity. But you have to consider the constraints. It's a cruise ship, and the venue isn't large enough to accommodate that. So it's unfortunate, but I think because of that omission in particular, I wouldn't say it's quite the level of Broadway. The performers, on the other hand, I think Disney usually makes pretty strong choices, specifically for the shows that are based on the films themselves. The ones that are more of a review or a compilation of different types of films, I would say the quality is not as strong on that front, and I'm sure we can go into that.
The other thing I was kind of thinking about too is just the timing. Generally, these shows run, now the Broadway one, or the like Tangled and Frozen run a little bit longer, but generally they're only like about 45 minutes or so. So do you think they're kind of constrained by time sometimes in telling the story as well, Brett?
Yeah, you're going to have a lot of just jumping around in terms of skipping piece of dialogue or key plot points just to propel the story and to really forefront the songs. But what do you think, Christy?
I agree.
Yeah, I think, we saw Frozen on Broadway, and then we went on the Wonder last spring and saw Frozen on the ship. And they're both, we really enjoyed both of them, but it's a 2-hour production, or 2+ hour production on Broadway versus, and I'm not sure exactly the exact time on the Wonder, but, an hour plus. So like you're saying, Brett, I think that kind of constrains it a little bit when they're kind of jumping around. So the show flows, but maybe not as smoothly as it does when they can tell the entire story.
Agreed.
I thought it would be easiest just to do it ship by ship. And I know that other than Christy, you're the only one that's been on the Dream. But let's start off with the first ship in the fleet, the Magic. And we'll just kind of go down the shows that they have on board. The ones that are running right now, the very first one, or the first show you're going to see on the first night. And I guess before we even jump into that, the first night tends to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, it tends to be the time when the cruise director is going to come out. He or she's going to kind of give you a heads up on what's coming up for your cruise, what you can expect, and then they're going to give you a little bit of taste of what type of shows you're going to be able to see on board. Is that what you guys have experienced?
That is true for week-long cruises.
And that was kind of what I was going to get to when we get to the Dream, because it seemed like they don't have a show like that. But with the Magic, it starts off with All Aboard, Let the Magic Begin. And have you experienced this one, Brett?
Yes, I have.
And so from my mind, or from what I remember, that's basically it. It's just kind of an overview of what you're going to see. They may have 1 or 2 performances, like 1 or 2 songs from the shows coming up to kind of whet your appetite and get you excited to come back and go experience the shows. From there, then, another show running on the Magic is called Disney Dreams. And I'll just kind of give a little overview of it. It's this. Have you guys seen this one before?
Yes.
Okay, and this one's a story about a little girl named Anne-Marie who can't seem to find her heart to believe. And so she's helped along the way. And I guess all of these, what do you think, Brett? They're kind of loose stories. It's kind of a loose storyline, other than the big shows like Tangled and Frozen that kind of are more showcasing Disney songs, it seems like. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
or characters, right? Yeah. Songs or characters, because sometimes it's the characters that come out too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is, I think, considered a fan favorite. I feel like a pariah. I really don't really care for the show. The Anne-Marie character, this is kind of a typical Disney trend for DCL, where they have human child characters played by, young 20-somethings. And when they try to adopt very youthful voices and personalities, it comes across as really irritating, at least in my eyes. So no disrespect to the performers, but that's how the script is kind of written, and it just doesn't feel very real. And it can be a little bit grating to listen to some of their voices when I'm sure the performers have these beautiful voices, but they're made to be reduced to be childlike. So the highlight for that show would be to see some of the actual Disney characters and those types of scenes. I might be a dissenter, but I totally take ownership of it.
No, I'm gonna be the opposite. I actually love this show, and I think the main reason why is not the story whatsoever. And I guess I kind of tend to agree with you on that, Brett. I like it when people are at least roughly the same age that they're supposed to be playing, but maybe it's hard for them to get somebody 10 or 12 to go out on a cruise, without going to school or whatnot. Maybe, I guess, I don't know. But that being said, I love all the music in this show, and they kind of highlight shows from Tangled. They have music from Tangled. They have music from The Little Mermaid, and the one that just always amazes me every time is when they play The Circle of Life from The Lion King. I've seen that twice, and I'm not sure what her name was that sang it, but it felt like you were watching the movie. It was just amazing. So in that case, or this show, Anne-Marie goes along her way, and those characters, Peter Pan, Sebastian, Mickey Mouse, Blue Fairy, all kind of help her to find that if you believe in yourself, and you see the strength of positive thinking, you have no idea what you can encourage the world to do, I guess, a little bit. So that's Disney Dreams. Then they have Tangled, and I know that your last cruise was on the Magic, so why don't you talk about Tangled, Brett?
Yeah, Tangled is really unique in the sense that certainly we know the film as being a great musical, but there were really only 5 songs in it. So I was thinking going into it, are they going to be able to translate this into a full-fledged musical production? And they actually incorporated some new music. And it's just a really stunning production. They have some great visual effects. Flynn Rider runs down the aisles in the audience, which is kind of fun. But the quality of the performers was also strong. I'm not sure if this is the same performer that you were referring to earlier, Steve, but the actress who played Mother Gothel on Our Voyage was absolutely fantastic. She, in my eyes, she could have voiced the character in the film just like Donna Murphy. So really strong production. I think Disney's really raising the game in terms of when they translate their animated films into full-fledged productions on their ships.
I'm going to take it just kind of in a weird kind of direction here quick. The one thing that they used to have on the Magic, and when we went to the Mediterranean, they stopped doing this, but they kind of made it a Tangled themed day almost, so that during dinner, they had the guards running around through your dinner looking for Flynn Rider, and they were kind of messing around with the waiters and kind of messing around with you while you're eating. They also turn the sports bar into the Snuggly Duckling, and they have the thugs come down there. You can play Thuggo and do a lot of different things. And I would love to see them kind of do this on all the ships based on the big musical that they're running that day, because I think that really added a lot of flavor. And when we went to the Mediterranean, they stopped doing that. They did turn it into the Snuggly Duckling, and then they played the musical. But I think part of that is because now they have Rapunzel's Royal Table as a restaurant. So I guess you kind of get that feeling when you go to eat there that night. Any thoughts on that? Do you guys think that'd be kind of cool? It's almost like, I'm not to take it to the level of a Star Wars or Marvel Day at Sea, but maybe just add some more touches during the day. I think it'd be kind of cool.
There's a lot of Star Wars and Marvel and Pirate Night. Where's Princess Day at Sea?
Maybe every day is a Princess Day at Sea while you're out there, huh, Christy?
Well, that's probably true, but I could, I want a more defined day at sea.
No, I'm with you, and I think they could really run with it. It wouldn't have to be over the top, but maybe just add some other special touches based on the show that they're showing that night. Like, it doesn't have to be every night, but just like the big Broadway show, like with Aladdin. I mean, think about what they could do with a genie, maybe if they had, somebody they could go through and kind of have fun with the guests during the day. But I kind of digress on that. Did you have a thought, Brett?
They should just have Agrabah on board. Like, I don't know, like they could have like a Cave of Wonders game or something. I think there's so many opportunities. Disney loves selling merchandise. Just have special merchandise that can only be bought on the day that they offer that production. Seems like it's a win-win situation. Imagine? Yeah.
No, I like your Agrabah idea. I mean, just think about like all the different drinks and maybe games that you could build around that. Okay, well, let's continue on. Go ahead.
I see Aladdin not lasting, personally. I don't know that it's got the staying power with all these other Disney movies. I wonder if there will be a thought to put something else there.
Why don't we touch on that at the end? Hold that thought, because we'll get to that. Although they're coming out with the live action of Aladdin, so maybe that'll stir things back up again.
Or they'll reimagine the current Aladdin then.
Yeah, and I guess that is, there's some controversy on whether it's really live action or not, but
right.
Yeah, well, and some of them,
like Lion King.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you're right with Lion King. Okay, so the other big show on board the Magic is Twice Charmed. I've actually never seen it. Brett, have you seen it?
No, afraid not.
Okay, and Twice Charmed is basically the continuation of the Cinderella story, so it picks up after she gets married, and it kind of tells you the story from there. And I've heard that, or have you talked to any the other patrons on board that have gone and seen the show, Brett?
Yeah, it's been kind of a staple of DCLs for at least a decade, I believe. And to my understanding, it's actually been reimagined over the past few years so that they changed some plot elements or perhaps some songs. So I guess one way of determining or comparing changes is you can actually go on YouTube and see versions of the productions, kind of like what Christy was saying earlier about the shows being videotaped and on your stateroom TV. Some of those versions have been bootlegged, I believe, to be on YouTube. So that would be the best way of seeing the particular distinctions.
And from my recollection, I think it gets a really overall positive reaction from everybody. Everybody we've talked to that have gone in that has seen it seem to enjoy it. My kids just aren't really interested in the princess thing, and so that's been a hard thing to get them to go. And I think my wife and I would go and see it, but we've always been busy doing something else for some reason. But I'd like to see it at some point. Well, the Magic and the Wonder, they are the two ships that run some of the longer voyages. So on the Magic, they have some additional shows that they're running right now as well. One of them, and you saw this on your transatlantic show, or transatlantic cruise, Brett, was Disney's Once Upon a Song. What did you think of that?
Yeah, so this is something that they offer only on occasion. So kind of like what you're sharing earlier, Steve, about going back and looking at previous navigators, you can see when this is offered, or has been offered, I should say. And this was essentially like a review of sorts where you just heard different renditions of Disney songs. But it was there primarily wasn't anything visually to look at. It was more of a showcase of the different performers on board and their voices. So I believe when I saw it, they were transitioning between casts in the Walt Disney Theater. So some folks were leaving and others were joining on board. And with Once Upon a Song, it was just where people, the performers, sang some of their favorite Disney songs, or presumably ones that are their favorites. And it was actually fairly lackluster, very much understated in terms of there wasn't anything in the way of sets in the background. I don't even recall any Disney characters, or if there were, it was very limited. So you really had to be gravitated toward the specific performers' voices. And there were some strong ones, but then there were some mediocre quality voices. So it's definitely something to check out because of the uniqueness of it, but by no means is it the same type of production as the other offerings in the theater.
In addition to Disney's Once Upon a Song, they also run, and like you're saying, Brett, on some of the longer voyages to fill up some of the nights as Walt Disney, The Dream Goes On. And doing a little research on it, it seems to me this is almost kind of like a musical / history lesson of Walt Disney's life. And it kind of picks up from as he was a child, from developing Oswald, the Lucky Rabbit, Mickey Mouse, and then on to Disneyland. So it seemed like it kind of incorporated live action on the stage and then also some video in the background as well. So you didn't see that one by any chance, did you?
No. Have you, Christy?
No.
Yeah, I mean, from the gist of it, it seemed almost like kind of like what you would get at One Man Stream down at Walt Disney World right now. So kind of a history lesson there. And then to finish it all up on the Magic, they run Remember the Magic, A Final Farewell. I'm not sure if I ever saw that. Have you, Brett?
Yeah, I think it's kind of akin to the earlier shows where it's more of a compilation of different elements of the cruise experience.
Yeah, it seemed like it was kind of like, this is where we've been, this is what you get to see, and please come back soon. Well, those are some of the shows on the Magic right now that are running. Let's turn to the Wonder then, which you sailed on your Panama Canal cruise, Christy. So once again, they run All Aboard, Let the Magic Begin. They run Disney Dreams, and then they run Frozen. Did you get a chance to see Frozen while you were on board?
We did, and we loved it.
Well, go ahead and talk about it a little bit. What were your thoughts overall as far as the production and the music and whatnot?
So they definitely cut it. You talked about this earlier, that the Broadway production is, a couple hours long, and they're making it fit in 1 hour. So it jumps a bit. It's helpful to know the story going in, but I feel like almost everybody at this point knows the story of Frozen. It was captivating. It's definitely my favorite Disney production, and my son was like glued to his seat with his like jaw open the entire time. It was adorable. He was so into it. It was really, really great. It was disappointing, actually, that they only played it one time, and it was a 14-night cruise, and we only got to see it once. But I think we talked about this before, but they were switching over their cast then. And so I don't know, there was something about rehearsals and whatever it was, we only got to see it once. But it's wonderful. I highly recommend it. You saw it and you've seen it on Broadway. So what is your take, having seen it in both places?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty amazing as well. I thought it was really well done. Just like you said, Christy, it kind of jumps around a little bit, but like you said, most people know the story. The one thing that I thought was amazing is on Broadway, Anna and Elsa are real people, but in this case, they are puppets, which I thought that was kind of neat. So it's kind of a combination of puppets and also live action on the stage. So that was kind of a neat aspect of it.
So you mean the kid Anna and Elsa, right?
Yes. I'm sorry, the kid Anna and Elsa. And then once they're grown up, then they're actual people. I should be a little bit more specific on that. But I thought that was kind of cool the way they did that. On Broadway, it was actual kids, and then once they were grown-ups, they were grown-ups, but Disney kind of worked their way around it once again by not having kids be able to perform on board by by using puppets. And I thought that was kind of a neat way to do it. So, yeah, 2 thumbs up on Frozen. I thought it was amazing. So, any thoughts on Frozen, Brett?
I think it's spectacular. I'm in the camp where I feel like Frozen has been a little bit oversaturated, but nonetheless, the quality of the stage show is quite strong, and there's really cool visual effects. They have projections on the walls of the theater that kind of reflect, I think, like snowflakes and some of the different patterns associated with the film. So that's nice, and Elsa is always awesome. So, how can you go wrong with Frozen generally?
Yeah, even my wife, who's kind of frozened out, whenever they play Let It Go, she just puts a smile on her face. So as much as we've all heard that song, it's still a pretty amazing song. The last big show that the Wonder has is the Golden Mickeys. Now, this is a show that we saw the very first time we went on, and I guess we haven't been back. Brett, you want to take a stab at it?
Sure. The Golden Mickeys is kind of like Disney's version of the Oscars, but it's very self-congratulatory because they're basically giving awards to themselves. Essentially, the plot line follows this individual named, I think, Ensign Benson, who is trying to organize things, and she realizes that she like hosting like the red carpet show, and she realizes that she can be a star as well. That's like the underlying tone, I think.
Yeah, as you walk into the theater, from what I remember, they put a red carpet out into the entrance itself, and she's kind of doing stuff out there at the beginning as you're walking in, and then it kind of flows onto the stage from what I remember. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, and what's really cool is like there's actually like a pre-show element to this, because not only the red carpet, but when you're sitting in the theater, they have a video screen and they show one of the like red carpet personalities interviewing some of the little kids who are about to enter the theater and getting thoughts on their favorite Disney characters. So that's kind of cute. Like there's like a little backdrop that says Golden Mickeys, and you can take like formal pictures in front of it. So it's actually kind of a nice setup.
Christy, have you seen the Golden Mickeys, and any thoughts on it?
I have not seen it. I've seen them do the interviews outside the theater before it starts. I have no thoughts on it.
So that's the Golden Mickeys. They also, because the Wonder does the longer voyages through the Panama Canal, they run a show called Be Our Guest Variety Show, and I couldn't find too much about that. By any chance, did you see that one, Christy?
There was like a talent show. So could it have been that? That's
my guess from it. It seems like, by using variety, probably all different kinds of things from singing to what other talents maybe the crew members might have on board.
Oh, it was the crew members, and I did see it. And yes, the crew members perform. And it's I believe it's the last night of the cruise.
So those are some of the shows on the Wonder that are on board today. Also, so let's turn our focus now onto the 2 big ships, and we'll start off with the Dream. Now, Brett and I haven't been on the Dream, but you saw Beauty and the Beast on Broadway. Brett, can you talk a little bit about your experience seeing Beauty and the Beast on Broadway?
Well, it was about 20 years ago, so I can't say I remember it all that vividly, but I recall different aspects, and I'm very familiar with the soundtrack. The old version of Beauty and the Beast, and I say old version because now we have the live action film, it has that classic Broadway feel. Perhaps some of the listeners have seen it on tour over the years, because that's one show that continues to have an audience, and it just has the very classy feel of those like old musical style ensembles and like just beautiful productions and sets and backgrounds. And Beauty and the Beast has always been probably my favorite Disney animated film, and the music is absolutely fantastic. So for those who are lucky enough to see it on Broadway, you're really afforded that true classic Disney experience with both the songs from the animated film back in '91, and then there were also a number of original songs that Alan Menken and Tim Rice and even a few that were unused from the film by Howard Ashman had written. So those songs like Human Again was actually translated back into the animated film down the line with a new sequence. And then there were some original songs featuring Belle and some of the other characters too. So it's a fantastic production. And I'm really excited to hear Christy's thoughts on how they brought it onto DCL, because my understanding is that they kind of were basing it on the new film version. Is that right?
Yes, they were. They based it on the new film, so the remake. It was really good, but it is a little bit dark at times. And we had a listener who wrote that in as well. And I guess people just need to know that. There's the fight scene in the woods, and I mean, and a couple of times my son asked to leave. Like, we eventually bribed him and said, when we leave the theater, we will go and get you a snack. Not a snack, but a toy. We'll go buy you something out of the gift shop. And so that's how we made it through the rest of the show. So it's not the same bright level that Frozen is. It is a darker production. It was really great. I can't wait to see it again. I will absolutely see it again. But you have to watch out with younger kids. So my son was 5. And like I said, there were several others that said, yeah, it's a little bit dark.
Yeah, I think that's the only one that we've gotten feedback on. As far as for the rest of the shows, they're all totally kid-friendly. Maybe this one might be the only one that you might think about bringing a younger child to, just based on what your child's personality is. But I would love to see this show as well. I love the music from it, and I would love to see kind of the scenery that they have on board. So from Beauty and the Beast, they have Disney's Believe. Now, have you seen this one, Christy?
I believe that I have seen it. I believe I've seen it in the theater, and then we also watched it on TV another time.
So this one features the genie from Aladdin and then a lot of other Disney characters, and they work with Dr. Greenway, who learns that magic is real and appears every day in the form of his beloved daughter, Sophia. Do you remember that part of it?
I do.
Okay. My guess is it's kind of, once again, kind of a thin story where they get to focus a lot of, or showcase a lot of their songs.
Yeah, you got to remember, they're also trying to entertain. I mean, they want to make it entertaining for adults, but they're also trying to make it entertaining for children. And so this goes in that category.
Gotcha. And the last show showing on board the Dream right now is the Golden Mickeys, which we've talked about. So the Dream, not quite as many shows, but that's mainly due to the fact that they only run 3- and 4-day cruises. And so I guess, as you said, Christy, because the cruises are shorter, they don't really have an overview show like they do on the other 3 ships.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
At least not at the moment.
Right. Let's turn our focus on the final ship, then, the Fantasy. The Fantasy runs 7-day cruises to the Eastern and Western Caribbean, and every now and then they run a longer cruise down into the Southern Caribbean. They start off with kind of an overview show like the Magic of the Wonder. Theirs is called A Fantasy Come True, where they kind of showcase what you're going to experience, and the cruise director comes out. And I should say, is your perspective as well, the cruise director comes out generally before each one of the shows, kind of gives a heads up on the show itself, but before they talk about that, they do talk about highlights of the things that might be happening that night and throughout the rest of the cruise. Is that kind of what you guys have seen as well?
Yes. So the show doesn't quite start, like the countdown of the show doesn't start exactly when they say. However, you still need to show up at that point if it's one of the main shows, because the theater will be so crowded. Some
of the other shows that the Fantasy runs is An Unforgettable Journey. Now, did you experience this one by any chance, Brett?
Yeah, I have. So it has certain parallels to the Let the Magic Begin one, but it has some more thematic elements that are reflective of the particular offerings on the Fantasy.
Okay. And then we move into Disney Wishes, which is a musical journey about 3 best friends who discover the secret of being grown up is staying connected to their inner child. Do you remember much about that one? Yeah,
I absolutely love this one. This is probably one of my favorite productions on board the ships. What's really cool about this is kind of like some of like Believe and Dreams and some of the other ones, they use kind of a generic storyline to frame the show, but then incorporate Disney characters and scenes thereafter. But what's cool about this one is that it's set initially in Disneyland, and it focuses on these 3 kids that are high schoolers that are about to graduate, and they're trying to think of their next steps in their lives and going off to college. And it's a brother, sister, and best friend trio, and the brother is in love with the female best friend, but he doesn't want her to know about it. And it's kind of this kind of cutesy dynamic of him feeling like that he can share his true feelings. And how do they learn about themselves? They're transported into Disney films, and they have some really cool numbers from like Mulan and Hercules and Jungle Book and Tangled. It's a nice compilation, and then they actually carry out the the storyline pretty well throughout all of these different Disney set pieces.
Yeah, it's pretty cute.
Well, you got me excited about that one. In all honesty, I kind of read it and I was like, okay, well, it sounds like just like one of the other ones. But you've totally set me up. I really want to see that when we're on the fantasy this spring, Brett. So I'll make sure to make a note of that one. So I like the fact that it's in Disneyland too. That's kind of cool. Not that I'm a little bit biased, but okay. So the big show on the fantasy is Disney's Aladdin, and I'm going to let you talk about this one, Brett.
Aladdin is indeed a kind of a reflection of, if any of you saw the old Aladdin musical spectacular out at California Adventure before Frozen came in, it's pretty much a carbon copy of that production. So about 45, 50 minutes long maybe. So not quite the Broadway version. So in the DCL version, it's all the same songs from the animated film. And I believe To Be Free, which is Jasmine's song, which was just created for that DC8 version originally. And it's pretty much a kind of by-the-numbers translation of the film, although there is no Abu, which is disappointing. I guess they couldn't train a monkey, or, I think they could have at least incorporated a puppet, but I guess they didn't.
I don't think they were doing puppets, though, when that show was created, What
a disappointment, though. But in any case, it's a really... I think it's a wonderful show. What's nice about it is that you have the role of the genie, who brings in some of that pop culture humor and just wackiness, and he's often the highlight of the show, and for good reason.
He totally steals the show. He's awesome. He is definitely, in my opinion, the best part of that show.
Oh yeah, Aladdin's great. But do you remember Aladdin for Aladdin? No, it's the genie. Mm-hmm. No offense. And in any case, what's also cool too is when they have the Whole New World number, which is, in my opinion, probably one of the best Disney songs ever written. And you have the magic carpet seemingly floating above the stage, some nice fog effects and things. And that's just a really beautiful number. And the performers carry it out well.
That's a real tribute, a testament to what they do right on these shows, is with the ability of the theater to actually make that happened. The idea that the carpet's flying above the stage, I think that's a pretty cool thing that they're able to do that. Brett, do you remember in DCA when it actually goes out and over the audience? I still think, to this day, I couldn't imagine being up there doing that, singing like they were.
That was a pretty spectacular sight. I feel like toward the end of the production, they may have actually discontinued that element because there were some little mishaps that unfolded with the carpet flying above the audience, and I think then they actually had it on stage akin to how it operates on DCL. But my gosh, what a wonderful show.
Any final thoughts on Aladdin there, Christy?
No, it's a great show. Although, like I said, I do wonder, though, if it'll stay, if it has the staying power, just because like you said, maybe because of live action. We'll talk about it later. But Genie is amazing. So go see it before they change it while the Genie still rocks.
And finally on the fantasy, they have Disney's Believe, which we talked about earlier. Now, Brett, you kind of alluded to it. You've seen some other shows that have been discontinued, one of them being Toy Story. I remember seeing that on the Wonder. What was the other one that you saw? Or do you remember?
Yeah, Villains Tonight.
Okay. That one sounds like... I would be surprised if they don't bring that one back with all the love of villains these days. My
thinking is if they bring it back, it'd be maybe themed around Descendants or something like that, because that has kind of a fan base now related to the villains.
And before we jump into that idea itself, can you talk a little bit about Toy Story 2? That was one that I know you had hoped that maybe they hadn't discontinued.
I think the disappointment stems from the fact that Toy Story is my absolute favorite Disney film, and Disney Pixar film, of course. And what was really unique about that production is here you have a film that had a few songs, but it was in the background. It was Randy Newman, but it wasn't a core component of the film. Whereas all these other films that have been translated on stage were indeed musical films. So they incorporated a lot of new tunes by some singer-songwriters. I think their names are Brendan Milburn and Valerie Vigoda. I only remember that because I saw them at the first D23 Expo a decade ago, and they were talking about writing the music for Toy Story the Musical. And what was so cool about it was that they really took a lot of chances with it in terms of experimenting with different techniques and visual effects. Like there's a big screen in the background that kind of placed you within the context of Andy's bedroom and some of the other settings from the film. The songs were fantastic. even though they weren't necessarily classics or memorable ones that you knew from the film. But there was like a whole song around the claw with the little green men, which was hilarious. And they had puppets. They had puppets of all the little green men inside the claw machine, and it was just awesome. So yeah, that was a bummer. They discontinued that on the Wonder a couple of years ago in place of Frozen. So there you have it.
Well, the one consistent thing with Disney is things are always going to change as times change and everything else. And with that idea, and I thought this is a good idea that you had, Brett, what in the future do you think you'd like to see Disney do as far as either shows or themes on board?
Well, I want to hear both of your thoughts too, but I think one really cool idea would be to have a whole production themed around Disney films that are set on the sea or at sea. So
like one of the little variety, like the Dream type show, and then they just I like that idea.
Yeah, like Little Mermaid, Moana, Finding Nemo, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. There is a song in that film, and it's really good. So there's just a number of opportunities I feel like they can capitalize on as it pertains to Pirates of the Caribbean. How can you forget that?
Definitely.
All right.
I think there's a lot that can be built around that concept, maybe.
Christy, how about you?
Well, I like Brett's idea. I take his idea.
Yeah. Come on, you got to throw something out. You got to throw something out there.
Do I? Do I really?
Like a movie. Think of it like a Disney movie that you'd love to see on stage.
Well, so The Little Mermaid, I absolutely love it. Lion King, I absolutely love it. So, and obviously they have a Lion King production already, but then what would they do? Would they have 2 Broadway type performances on a ship, or will they get rid of Aladdin and do something else? I don't know where they would put. I like the idea of a variety show because then they can put some of these little elements in there without having it to be, having it be the main production show. All right, Steve, it's your turn. I had to share. You have to share.
So I did a lot of thinking on this, and it's hard to think of just. I do have one show, but it's probably a little bit different. I'm not sure how you would incorporate it, but with all the rest of the kind of, I'm trying to find the right word for it, but like A Fantasy Come True and Disney's Believe and whatnot, they kind of incorporate all the, like the older songs and themes. What I would like to see them do is maybe do something like, and I'm going to go towards Pixar, is like an Incredibles Day, where they have different things happening from the beginning, from the time you get up, that kind of builds towards a show at the end, and sort of like they're doing with the Star Wars Hotel, where you're kind of immersed in the story. Have it kind of be a story that happens through the day, so that you need to go to the show in the evening to see how it ends, and things that maybe you do or experience during the day are kind of wrapped up in that show at the end. And I'm not sure how you would do it. You'd have to be creative, which is probably not me, but I think it'd be kind of cool to do something like that along those lines. And I'm not sure how you would incorporate music with that. There is music in The Incredibles, obviously, not them singing, but music in the background. I don't know. What do you think, Brett?
Oh, I think Edna Mode could hold a whole fashion show, and how they can sport some of her outfits. They can sell merchandise in the shops featuring those designs that the kids can buy and wear.
Yeah,
and go on stage. There you have it.
Yeah, so I think for like a Sea Day, if they could incorporate it all into kind of a culmination at the end, more so than just like the Frozen dance party in the evening, I think it would be kind of cool to do something along that and bring it all into a show at the end. So that's my thought.
Sign me up.
So, well, thank you guys for coming on. I guess kind of as we close out, Brett, any final thoughts on the shows on board DCL or just the shows in general or seeing them?
I think it's definitely a core component of a Disney cruise. It would almost seem to be like something is missing if someone goes on their first voyage and doesn't catch any of the productions, or even those of us, like all 3 of us who are repeat cruisers. There's still a lot to be gained from the shows, even if you've seen them multiple times, because sometimes they change them out, as we've seen illustrated over the years, and there's always a variety of performers, and we generally love the music. So I think it's something that differentiates Disney from the other cruise lines. Yes, almost all the cruise lines are going to have the variety shows, and even like Royal Caribbean has performances that are based on specific Broadway shows, but Disney has the Disney element, and that really very much runs throughout all their productions in the best possible ways. Yes, there are some, as I kind of alluded to, some generic elements here and there, but overall, Disney casts very strong performers, and they have really fun, engaging shows. So they're worthwhile. Absolutely.
Well, I don't think that can be better said. One last final thought I thought of too. There's no lip syncing on Disney. These performers are all performing them live on stage, which I totally give them credit to that. That's pretty amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Brett. I really appreciate all the times you've come on the show. Now, this is the third time. You're becoming. We're gonna have to label you as a co-host here soon.
No, my pleasure. I'd say 3 times the charm to kind of
oh boy.
Yeah.
Working that in.
Thanks for having on. I appreciate it.
And before we go, what's in your plans coming up? Any cruises or travels down to Disney World, Disneyland, or what do you got going on?
No Disney Parks trips in the immediate future, but I will be at D23 Expo in California next August, so I'm getting pretty psyched about that.
And you've been before?
Yeah, the first 3 D23 Expos back in 09, 11, and 13. So, yeah, that's a massive and cool event.
Yeah, do you do the whole, sleeping in line and stuff?
I haven't, but I might be inclined based on how I know how much the event has grown over the past several iterations.
Yeah.
In terms of getting into those events. And it's a great space, too, to sometimes hear some DCL announcements. So, should be interesting.
Well, if you're up for it, we might have to use you as our reporter on the scene and have you come on and talk about D23 when you get done.
For sure.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Thanks.
And or we can have them post live right on the Facebook page from it. That would be so cool.
Yeah.
I did want to give you one other prop too. You guys, you're planning on taking a cruise here in June?
Yes, I'm going to be leaving DCL for the first time and setting sail on Royal Caribbean in Europe. So it will be quite the adventure, and it'll be interesting to compare experiences across cruise lines, as I know both of you have done over time on this podcast. So it'll be intriguing for sure.
I was going to call you a traitor until you us into it and said that we stray. So I guess you can't do that anymore.
Yeah, it's the pot calling the kettle black as you just got off of back-to-back 2-day of the Celebrity. No, I mean, that's a great thing about cruising. I mean, there's just so many different opportunities out there. So thank you again, Brett, for coming on today. Thank you so much for helping us out with this DCL 101 show, talking all about the shows on board the ships. I want to wish you and your family the best this holiday season. And if we don't talk to you before you head out on that cruise, give us a call when you get back, and we'd love to talk to you about your experiences on Royal Caribbean and hear all about traveling around the British Isles.
Thanks. Sounds good. And happy holidays to both of you as well.
Thanks again, Brett, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Once again, I really want to thank Brett for coming on and taking time out of his busy schedule to help Christy and I navigate through all the different shows on board DCL these days. And as always, check your navigator when you get on board. Sometimes the shows do change. And I really want to encourage everybody to go out there and take advantage of them and see them. And just like art, some you're going to love and some you may not like as much, but they are all entertaining and definitely worth your time going to see on board when you're on the ship. So between now and our next show, if you'd like to get a hold of Christy or I, you can always reach Steve here at DCL Podcast on Twitter and on Facebook. Of course, you can always find Christy over at packyourpixiedust.com, PackYourPixieDust on Twitter, and Pack Your Pixie Dust on Facebook. And if you have time, all of us here would really appreciate it if you'd go over to iTunes and give us a review. That kind of helps us get the show known a little bit better in the Disney community, and especially in the cruising community as well. So between now and our next show, if you're heading out on your next vacation, all of us here at the DCL Podcast would like to wish you fair winds and safe travels as you head out on your next adventure. Once again, thanks for coming back and taking a listen, and we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast.